You were getting so red.
I know. I got it was like fine for a second, and then it was boom red. That was funny. I was watching my screen too, and that happened. I could see exactly when I turned red.
And that's why we get the fake tan before we go on stage, so you can't see
brown instead of red. Yeah. You're just orange. You don't got to worry about getting red while you're up on stage.
You hold your breath from the moment you walk out, so then they can't tell the difference.
Well, you do end up holding your breath for a lot of posing. I mean, you're supposed to breathe, but a lot of guys end up holding their breath. So you gotta learn how to breathe while also posing at the same time. So
nothing's harder than breathing through a vacuum.
Oh, dude, it's so hard to not show your stomach like going in and out while you're breathing. You know. Yep. So gotta be careful of that.
I just tried to do it, and I made an audible noise when I tried to intake breath.
I mean, a vacuum I can understand if you're holding your breath, but everything else you should be breathing, especially when you're doing like something like a rear double or something like that. You actually have like a little more room to breathe. In men's physique, it's relatively easy to breathe, especially when you're in your back pose. You could stretch out your back and kind of breathe a little bit through your diaphragm. As long as you're breathing through your diaphragm, you'll be fine.
I like to just drop my gut out when I'm doing that. Really let the side judges see a full panel.
Yep. I just right from the front I just go beer belly. So they say the worst. I come out with a beer belly, breathe, and whew, these fucking abs. It tricks their mind to think, oh, that's not what he looked like before. Now he looks like this. Why he looks a lot better than he did a second ago. Tricks their mind.
Psychology, man. Yeah.
Reverse psychology. You got to show them what's the worst, and you can show them what's the best.
That's so stupid.
I know it is dumb. Reverse psychology. But, yeah, so somebody went pro that goes to Empire, you said?
Yeah, so Empire gym I used to train at had this gal, let me pull up the post, who trains at Empire, and she got her IFBB pro card 2 days ago.
Very nice.
Let's see. Do we have a name? Oh, that's crazy. The guy is one of the guys. Her page is her and her husband. They're both coaches, and I've seen him before. But yeah, name looks to be Jacqueline Connie, something like that. But she went to the, let's see, what show is this? Let me get the post from, that'll actually have it. NBC East Coast Cup. She put 2023, but it's clearly the 2024. Oh, no, that was the last year's post. Here we go. But yeah, East Coast something. And she got her pro card, which Empire's got a couple, I'm not sure if they're all pros, but they have a couple people in the industry that are doing pretty well for themselves, and this is just another name on that list. So that's one of the downsides of not training there. Like, yeah, I was surrounded by some people who really knew what they were doing, but obviously we've talked about in the past the reasons why I left. But really cool to see that, because that could be someone that, you know, I see on the reg if I was going there, or just, I mean, it's Empire's in Leominster, so I could be doing shopping and just run into a pro, which is pretty darn cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, especially in Massachusetts, it's not often that you see pro bodybuilders. Like, there's a few generally in the area. There's more competitors than pros, obviously, but like, you generally see people just on like the amateur side that just compete and then end up calling it a day. Like, the vast majority of people that I know that compete in Massachusetts never reach the pro level. Even if some have the potential to do so. There's a few off the top of my head that stopped competing prior to making pro, and they totally could have made pro if they kept going with it. You know, various things get in the way, you know, having a kid or, you know, having family, stuff like that. And they end up prioritizing that over bodybuilding rather than competing. You know, they just end up focusing on that, which makes sense. But I think what's also the beauty of bodybuilding too is that there are times where you can kind of not necessarily push it to the side, but you don't have to. Like, the majority of bodybuilding is really just like off season, like bulking, maintenance, recomp, stuff like that. So a lot of the year you can really start focusing on other things as well. The only time where really like bodybuilding you have to really dive head first in and really focus on it is just like prep, which if you compete once a year is roughly 3 months to 4 months out of the year. And even then, most people don't even really compete once a year. They usually compete once every like 2 years or something. Just given that, you know, especially if you're talking on the natural level, once every 2 years is a pretty good, I think, interval, especially with like recovery and making progress, stuff like that, to get to a better place naturally. So, it's really not that often that you really have to like keep your mind on it 24/7.
Yeah.
And even then, like, you can still like when I was in prep, it wasn't, yes, I was doing a lot of cardio, but it's also because it was my first prep and all of that. But like now, like I should pretty much maintain like just like a half-hour cardio a day, and that should be enough. And then just normal training. And really the only thing that it takes away from is really just your energy. You just lack a lot more energy and stuff like that. So it's not even like you spend more time on anything. If anything, it takes less time of your day, especially if you maintain the same cardio, because you're eating less and cooking less. So you end up spending less time on it, but your energy isn't there to do the things that you want to do. Like when I was in prep, you know, obviously stuff, you know, I play a lot of video games and I love playing video games, but like there's a period for like 3 or 4 weeks that just didn't have the energy to ever play. I just didn't get on. So like that's kind of stuff that it'll pull away from. But outside that, I mean, you know, it's most of the year you'll have the energy to do whatever you want to do and enjoy the things you want to enjoy. But it is cool to see that, you know, there is a pro there. It's pretty frequent that I see pros down here, but it's also a pretty big, you know, metropolitan area. So
I was going to say, I mean, if I was close to the Boston area, I'd be willing to bet there's some, especially if they're like in Jay Cutler's ring, like either in his like coaching ring or even just people who train in that area. Because I mean, that's kind of a indicator for anything you do. If you surround yourself with people who are better than you at something or just more driven than you, you're going to succeed, because unless you just have a very like standby-ish personality. But most people, if they see others doing well around them, they want to get to that level and, you know, push past them. It's that competitive edge, especially in men. Most of us men have that, and that's, you know, for anything. Like I golf a lot. I want to surround myself with the best golfers I can find to boost my levels, and it's the same for bodybuilding. Like in terms of Massachusetts, like the only big person we've ever had was Jay. So it's all about, you know, if you can surround yourself with that environment, you can't really go wrong. Like you're going to have a font of knowledge there. You're going to have the best training availabilities. You're going to have, I mean, we're psychos. We'll walk through the snow to get to the gym. Like there's a lot that you can achieve if you have that greatness surrounding you. Which, you know, this particular individual getting their pro card continues to speak to, like, you know, the Leominster area. Gardner not really has anybody, but we're near Leominster.
We have. Was Chainsaw.
Well, I mean, Chainsaw's Leominster, though.
Now, yeah, he used to be a regular at Vanarchy, but now he frequents Leominster gyms and all that, and it's pretty much because of family. It's closer to home. He doesn't have to drive so far and all of that, so it makes a lot more sense for him. And he got pro in the Masters division, so it was like, when you're in the Masters, like if it was me in Masters, and let's say like I really got into bodybuilding at that age bracket, which a lot of guys do. A lot of guys don't really get in, you know, they might be like into fitness and stuff like that, and they might be like have a foundation for it, but might not get into it until they're like after 35 or something like that. And if they do, my goal at that stage would to just be get pro, and then I'd probably just call it a day at that point. It just, because it does take a while to get there. I mean, most guys, like the more I see of the pro level, like people getting pro, the average I see is like at like the shortest I see is like, unless you're a prodigy, is like 6-7 shows at least before you actually hit pro, like get that pro card, and let alone what you can end up doing with it when you compete at the pro level. But like somebody I know, I got to reach out to actually about something, but this guy, Brandon, that is under my coach, just got pro, and it's his 10th show that he got pro at. So it took him 10 shows to get there. And if you're doing like 1, maybe 2 shows a year, I mean, that takes a while to get there, you know? So being at the pro level Masters wise, like my goal would just be to get pro. And then there's not really much, you can compete in Masters and pro, but it's like, there isn't really like, yes, there is a Masters Olympia, but like there really isn't like
A lot
too much
available.
more you can do with it. Yeah. Where if you get pro when you're like in your mid to early 20s, then you still have a lot more time to really take it to the next level. So you gotta, take into that account. And I mean, even in Massachusetts, like the best of the best are probably like Saugus, Lowell, Auburn, maybe Auburn near Worcester, Saugus, Lowell. Not even really too much Boston.
You gotta have a little hood in you to to make it.
Well, I mean, Auburn has what's it called down there? There's that big gym there. I'm trying to blank. Like if I lived in Massachusetts still, I would go to the Auburn gym. I forget what it's called. It's relatively expensive. I mean, cheaper than where I go fucking now, but
Guessing you're not talking about Impact Fitness Club.
I think it is Impact.
Is it?
I think
Auburn?
so.
Oh, yeah. Yep, that's Auburn.
Yeah, Impact.
It's either
yeah,
that
so
or... Yeah, no, that's it.
Yeah, so it'd be Impact that I'd go to. It's about half hour or something like that from Leominster, but it is quite a drive. But if I was in that area, I'd probably just do that drive and just head over there. And then there's a couple spots up in Saugus and Lowell. Not too much in Boston because Boston is so congested and hard to find like the space for like a decent like warehouse sized gym. It's can't really find something there. So it's like a lot of more like commercial stuff. But outside that, yeah, that's pretty much what you're looking at. We're like outside of Massachusetts, the next one you got is like the biggest one is the Bev Francis Powerhouse in Brooklyn, New York, which is like really where the pros would go.
And that's on the bucket list for both of us.
Oh yeah, my coach just hit that gym a few weeks ago, and I'm like, damn it, I'm fucking jealous. That's like my dream gym I want to hit. One of them. There's a few out there I want to hit. Bev Francis Powerhouse is definitely one of them.
Yeah, and
so I want to hit
that's
that.
Again, that's just that culture thing. Like that's where the top of the top go, and New York has some big names. So it's like that's you're going to be training with some good folk there.
Yeah, I mean that was like Kai Green's main gym. Like that was where he stayed around and
before he started eating just watermelon, right? Isn't that him?
I have no idea.
There's a bodybuilder who was only one of the. I mean, not currently. Still going. Switched to a watermelon-only diet.
That's dumb. You're asking to get hurt. Because watermelon has, like, very little calories in it. Just water and sugar.
Kai Muscle.
Kai Muscle, okay.
Cali Muscle. Yeah, there you go.
Cali Muscle.
Muscle.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. He's also just a fucking psycho, so there's that. His pre-workout name is Hyphy Mud. Yeah, because I want to drink mud for my pre-workout.
But his thing is... I don't know. Let's see. It was I ate only watermelon for 32 days. I'm fed up with being fat, eating a diet based on white rice. No more. 51 years old, 5'8", 280 pounds. My goal is 200. Jesus.
You'll fucking do that if you eat only watermelon because you're eating basically nothing. You're basically just eating tofu at that point. I mean, it's very little calories. It's just, like I said, water and sugar. That's pretty much all you're getting out of that. You're having like no protein there.
Before, after. You probably didn't post the real stuff. Probably edited it because.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, like. I don't know if I buy that. It's real pixelated. The picture didn't come through good, but it's basically him dropping about 40 pounds and just being absolutely diced and lean. And I have no doubt that he definitely would have lost the weight, but no chance that he comes out looking that good. Like there's veins protruding through his pecs, like not even like biceps. So we're talking pec
and he's also taking copious amounts of anabolics. There's no way he's not, just to fucking survive through that. Because you can't, when you're eating a diet like that, if you're vegan or something, there's no chance you can actually recover from training from a diet like that. Your body doesn't have the nutrients to do so. So in order to recover, you're going to have to take copious amounts of anabolics just to assist your body recovery. And even then, I mean, if you're just eating just watermelon, you're still going to have shit recovery because you're not having the carbs, protein, and fats in order to recover, let alone micronutrients. He'd have to take a bunch of vitamins too.
I just want to know what the nutrition labels look like for watermelon.
It's not much.
Let's see. We'll take a stock image from Food Gardening Net. 100 grams for... Here, I'll share.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I'm really sharing much, but With 30 calories for 100 grams, and then
Yeah, see, it's all just sugars. It's all just
carbs.
naturally occurring sugars.
Carbs, that's it. A touch of fiber.
Yeah, and look at the sugars, 6.2 grams.
Yeah, yeah, and that's for just the small serving. So
I
you
mean,
talk about eating that constantly.
a
Yeah,
good
7
25
grams,
calories per 100 grams is just straight sugar. The
10
other 5 grams
grams.
is like the fiber and like a touch of protein.
Yeah,
So I mean, you're not getting much from that.
no.
That's why veganism is just not the way to go. Not the way to go.
I always
And
I love those arguments that are made that's like you're abusing animals, and I'm like, when we were fucking hunting to sit just to survive, you think that ever
mhm.
crossed our minds? You think animals out in nature ever have that cross their mind? No, it's just the way of the world. Literally, and
When you're prey and you get caught, they just give up. That's just how it is. That's just
yes,
life.
yeah,
Most animals, if you're not the apex predator, most animals' life lasts until they're eaten.
yep,
Believe it or not, that's literally
yep,
how it goes. Like you die by getting eaten, pretty much. You know, so I mean, we're not even like apex predators. We've removed ourselves from the food chain. We're not even part of the food chain. So you can't even
yeah,
really consider us apex predators. There's a video, there's a cartoon, and it was like an elephant. And it was like panting, and in the text it said like it was like panting, and it was like, oh, finally, I think I outran them. I ran all day. And then it was like they like turned around, and on this hill you could see a silhouette of humans with spears. And I'm like, fuck yeah, you can never knock the human spirit, dude.
yep.
We're the best runners in the animal kingdom. You can't fight that, which is literally
Well,
the reality.
what I think is interesting too is that for a while, people accredited, or when this conversation first came around for not killing animals to eat
Hmm.
food and whatever, it was accredited to the fact that we have a conscience and like that's conscience, sorry, and that's telling us not to do it. But now, come to find out, most animals have a conscience. They just don't care. Like a cat,
Yeah,
for
they gotta
example.
survive.
My cat can be happy and sad. It has emotions. It can think. My cats can think. But if it saw a rat on the ground, it's fucking killing that thing. It's not.
Hmm.
It's not gonna wait
Its
around.
instincts take over.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's how it goes. I mean, if you're straight into the woods and you're on the verge of death, there's nothing you wouldn't do to survive. It's your
Mm-hmm.
natural instincts would kick in, and you'd forget. I mean, there's people like who are stranded with other people, and they will resort to cannibalism before
Yep.
dying. Like that's just there's things that have happened that will point to that.
Yep.
It just shows that you have to survive. Your natural instincts will kick in, and your adrenaline will kick in, and you won't even think anymore. You just become an animal, basically.
Yep.
So you gotta take that into account. Should we kill them in a humane way? Absolutely. You know, the less pain, the better. Just because we're gonna be using them for that. But we gotta survive somehow, and we're not meant to be vegans. We're not meant to be herbivores. We're omnivores. Even just
Mm-hmm.
looking at our teeth alone show that we're omnivores. We're not supposed to be carnivores. We're not supposed to be vegans. You know, we're supposed to have both meat and plants and survive off of that. That's why our bodies need what they need. You know, you have animals that are carnivores. They're supposed to just have carnivores. That's why they all have sharp teeth. Cats, dogs, they're carnivores because all their teeth are sharp.
Mm-hmm.
That alone shows it, you know? So you got to understand that. But
There's a
yeah,
big movement now for the plant-based. They got like burgers, meatballs, stuff like that, and
yeah, the fake, the impossible shit.
their whole thing is no cholesterol. That's their whole like marketing thing. And
Yep.
I mean, if you want to give up meat and give up the all the other micronutrients that are found within meat, be my guest. I'm going to keep eating it. But I
Yeah.
can't believe the amount of people who buy it because they think it's I mean, I don't know why people fall for that stuff.
I mean, there's better ways to cut out cholesterol if you really do actually have high cholesterol issues.
Yeah.
Than just getting like fake meat. If you want to look at like the difference between real meat and fake meat, just look at the ingredients list. It's just ultra processed, a million ingredients in these vegan burgers and stuff like that. And it's like, dude, you're harming your body more than you're actually helping it, you know? So and you're also paying for it too.
That's the same for the oh yeah, because everything is more expensive when it's in the vegan category. Or when you see the they slap the organic label on a bunch of stuff and overcharge for it, and it's literally got like preservative, like the chicken breasts I see that are organic, their expiration date is like 2 weeks after a regular chicken breast. I'm like, that's not that's not right.
Organic, at least in the US, is super easy to achieve. It's very easy to get it. And a lot of them are like, oh, we're pesticide free or something like that. And it's easy to get around that because they know when they're coming to test for it and all that. So they could use pesticides and all of that, you know, Monsanto and whatnot, up until it's the point where they have to pull it back in order for to pass the testing. It's extremely easy to get the organic certification. It doesn't mean anything anymore. It was just a marketing trick. And I'm glad that it fell off, because I remember when we were kids, like, organic was like, everything was organic. You wanted to get all the organic shit. It was like, that was the like real peak of it, was when we were kids, like in the mid to late 2000s, early 2010s, maybe. It's really fallen off now. Now there's like the organic sections in the store. Before, it was like everything was trying to be organic. Yeah. And it's like, it's not really how it works. Even with like the gluten-free stuff, like people are like, oh, I have a gluten intolerance. And it's like, it's probably not an gluten intolerance. It's probably because you're just eating terrible and you feel like crap. That's probably what it is.
Yeah.
You know?
People who, and this is obviously a gross overgeneralization, but for example, you have someone who says, I have that gluten thing, and then you're like, okay, what's your intake of, you know, fiber? And they say, you know, the burgers from like Wendy's or fast food and stuff. And I'm like, yep, that's why. Go get yourself some Dave's seeded bread, and your body's going to be like, this is awesome. What are you feeding me? This is great. You forget that gluten thing. Give us gluten.
No, there are people who really do have like gluten intolerances, and like,
I agree.
They throw up and shit their pants and all that from having it. And that makes a lot more sense. But the people who are just, oh, I don't feel good after having gluten. It's like, yeah, you're not supposed to have pizza. It's not we're not supposed to have that as humans. Like, it's not good for you. Like, of course you don't feel good after it. It's not the gluten. Yeah. It's literally just that your body doesn't like it. So that's the other thing that they try to sell, is the gluten-free shit.
The thing that gets me too about the vegan conversation is when they get their tofu, and you see all the time on social media the farmers that speak out against this, and they're like, listen, you don't want to kill animals or kill anything for that matter, but to create tofu, you are completely eradicating however big the farming square is. And by completely eradicating, that means everything living in the soil, worms, little rodents, bugs, everything. You're killing every plant that isn't the tofu plant. Everything. And then you're spraying it with all sorts of different, you know, growth hormones and everything to just create the supply for that demand. And that whole process, super expensive, which is why tofu and other related products are more expensive than getting real meat or whatever. But it's just like, if you're coming from a moral standpoint, you're losing that every single time. I can get it if for some reason you think it tastes better. It doesn't. But if you for some reason think it tastes better, sure, have that argument. But from a moral standpoint, completely wrong.
That's like that. Well, there's that farmer in the Joe Rogan podcast who said that. He's like, I have to kill every mole, every rat, every frog, every insect, spray the shit out of it with pesticides, just so that you can feel better about yourself, thinking that you're not killing animals. And he goes, fuck you. Like, that was his whole argument.
And the thing is, the sad part, though, is that some farmers recognize that, and they're going to do it so that they can make that money, because there's good money in that. But it's just like, you can't win a moral conversation argument when you're trying to justify tofu over, you know, the slaughtering of animals. It's just not there. And all of those people that do that, put them out in the wilderness, go on a backpack camping trip. What are you gonna eat? What are you gonna do to survive? You're gonna tell me that on 2.5 days of no eating, you're not gonna see a squirrel go across and you're not gonna try and hunt it? You kidding me? No. You're gonna try your absolute darndest.
Yeah, I mean, they also argue like the protein intake. They're like, oh, beans have higher protein count or whatever per gram than chicken or whatever it is. And it's like, yeah, just because there's in quotation more protein as a macronutrient doesn't mean your body processes it the same. You know, your body processes chicken protein way easier than it does like beef protein. It's a slow digesting protein versus a fast digesting protein. So it's like, it's not the same. Your body, it takes so long for your body to digest bean protein in comparison to any other protein. It's way more taxing on the digestive system. Protein isn't necessarily like all protein isn't the same. Whey protein is very like whey isolate protein is way different than casein protein. And there's a reason why you get both. You know, I mean, there's all different kinds of protein out there. So you can't argue that either. It's just a losing battle. You're just fighting for something that just doesn't really exist to make yourself feel better. And I can understand if you're like, oh, we should be, you know, you're killing animals in an inhumane way. Most farmers do actually care about their animals. Some don't, you know, don't get me wrong. There are some that are monsters and don't give a shit about any of them and kill them in a terrible way. But like most farmers really do care about the animals. If you actually do the research, like for instance, like most dairy farms are like, oh, how would you feel if they strapped you down and milked you constantly to get as many ounces of milk out of you as possible? It's like, that's not really actually how dairy farmers are. They have to take care of those animals in a really good way. They have to be happy in order for them to produce milk. Mm-hmm. So they have those rotating carousels and all that for the cows to come in and out whenever they want. They love it because they get all the milk out. You know, they feel better afterwards. They go out and graze all day. Like they're supposed to be fat and plump to produce the best milk possible. And then with the meat cows, for instance, they have to give them really good, like lean grass that has grown really well in order to facilitate the best muscle possible out of those cows to get the most yield. So those cows, you know, generally they're leaner. They're not milk cows. They're the beef cows are generally a lot leaner and not as fat, but because of that, they have to provide lean and healthy grass for them to eat and healthy foods so that they're nice and strong, so that they can get the best meat out of them. So it's like you're fighting a battle that just really isn't there. Same with like chickens. Yeah, there's obviously like really bad chicken farms, but like a lot of chicken farms are pretty open range for the most part, and chickens don't really understand fully what's going on. They're not like cows, you know, they have less of brain capacity than cows, so they don't really fully know exactly what's going on as much as cows do. Cows are way more personable and have way more processing power of what's going on around them. So you're just kind of fighting a losing battle, and a battle that just doesn't really make any sense. And to be able to fight that battle is a privilege, you know, to be able to be vegan is a privilege, you know.
I was going to say too, but it's not nearly as like there's not nearly as many, you know, deer farms or anything like that, but it's a super interesting I forget if it was a study or just a overall research that was done, but it's if we did not consume the amount of like venison and hunt the deer and stag that we do, the United States would be overrun by deer, and it would cause widespread chaos because those motherfuckers eat. Like cows, they graze. Deer eat, and they eat everything. So
they reproduce very fast as well. That's why we have to hunt them. We literally keep the population low. They would literally overrun. They're an invasive species. They would literally overrun everything if we didn't kill them. Yeah. You know, we have to hunt them. They don't really have that many predators anymore. A lot of their predators are starting to die out, so we have to hunt them. Mm-hmm. Like, and you know, obviously hunting has its regulations. There's deer hunting season and stuff like that. There's only times of the year where you can kill them, so that way they can reproduce and bring that population back up, and then we bring it back down. There is a balance there. Same with fishing and all of that. There is a balance, so that way we're not fishing anything to extinction. We're not hunting anything to extinction, stuff like that. There are checks and balances in place so none of that happens. But venison is very good. I really like venison. Same with bison. Bison's very good. Bison's very underrated. Not many people talk about bison. Before. Oh, it's so good, dude. Go to any place that has bison burgers. Oh, you'll never go back to beef. Like any chance I get, if there's a restaurant we're going to and they have bison burgers, even if I want something else, I get it because it's not easy to find bison burgers, but they're good. And if you can get bison at the store, it's a lot more expensive. It's like $10 a pound or something like that, but it just tastes so much better. It's got a hint of game on it, but it's just so much better. It tastes so much better. It's much better for your body. But bison, I think, live a lot longer, so it's harder to get the meat from them than cows. And they're also a lot bigger too, so you can't have as many. And they take a lot more resources to raise and all of that. That's why it is more expensive. But yeah, bison's very good. Same with fish. You got to be careful. We got to hunt, a certain amount of salmon, certain amount of cod, all of that in order to not fish them into extinction. Like tuna, there's only certain months out of the year that we can hunt tuna or fish tuna because we could easily fish them into extinction very easily. They live a very long life. So it'd be very easy to catch all the tuna possible and then have no more tuna.
Yeah.
So it'd be very easy to do that. So there are things in place so that doesn't happen. But yeah, deer is a good example of that, where it literally, like, when I moved here to Charlotte, I would see deer in Charlotte in the city. And I'm like,
which is wild, because
hunting season should be right on the corner, because this is not good. This is not how I should not be seeing deer in my apartment complex. Like, that should not be a thing. So, yeah, it is a problem that we do keep under control. We have to keep it under control. We rely on hunters to do that.
See, I'm gonna contribute to that process, because I'm not gonna do it until I'm done with grad school and paying off my car, because then I can really divert the funds I want to. But that's in 2 years' time. I'm gonna do the carnivore diet from then. Also, while I'm young and don't have the heart problems I might have later on in life, which you're more prone to, especially with that red meat intake. But I really want to try that out, the carnivore diet, where I eat nothing but meat.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good diet for the short term.
Yeah, it's definitely something I'll try for maybe 3 months or something like that.
Yeah, it's from what I've seen, like, I remember Joe did it for a long time, and the problem with the carnivore diet is that you get like really bad shits in the beginning. Your body's processing a lot of meat, and it doesn't really know what to do with it, so it doesn't solidify. So you have really bad diarrhea for like a week, but then after that, your body starts to relax, and you start losing a ton of weight because you're not taking in as many carbs or fats or anything like that. So, and what's good about the carnivore diet is that as long as it's a meat, you can have it, basically. It's like you can have as fatty of meat as you want, whatever kind of meat you want. Like, that's what's good about it. Any seasoning you want, stuff like that. But you have to stick to the meat. You can't get any carbs. You can't get anything that's like butter or anything like that. You have to have just meat. I think it'd be interesting to try. I think that if there's any diet I was going to live off of after bodybuilding, like probably when I'm done bodybuilding one day, I'll probably stick to like a paleo diet or something like that, where I stay away from the processed stuff, stay away from, foods we're not supposed to eat, stay away from sugars, stuff like that. Just have like whole foods that are just good for you. I probably would stick to something like that. And I think, like, especially when Paige and I have kids, I probably want to have them basically, when they're able to eat solid foods, basically have them on essentially like a paleo diet, where they just have non-processed whole foods that are just good for you in general and aren't taxing on the body, nothing like that. I think that's really the main diet that I truly think is the way we're supposed to eat, which we've talked about before. It's how our ancestors ate and how Neanderthals ate and all of that, because that's all that was available at the time. There was nothing processed or no pasteurized milk or anything like that. I mean, obviously, like filtered milk, you don't want to drink raw milk, but like stuff like that, No,
you're gonna raise a cow and just go from the udder. Yeah,
just straight from the udder. Just
you gotta old
mouth
school
udder.
It. You gotta old school it, where you squeeze the milk out into a tin pail and carry in the pail.
Yeah, what's that metal called? I forget what it's called, with the different shades around it. I can't stand the feel of it. It's so rough. But yeah. I don't know how to, I can't stand it. It's like one of those like sensory things I can't fucking stand. I can't stand that metal. But use that metal and just have like metallic raw milk every day. One thing I do want, when we do have our own land and all of that, is I do want chickens for eggs. Just because I know
you'll produce more than you can possibly eat.
Yeah. I'd only have like a few chickens, maybe at most. And just like a rooster or something. But it's like, it's not to do it for the money, it's just to do it for the fresh eggs, because people do it like, oh, it'd be cheaper for eggs. It's like, no. When you have chickens, the saying is that they're having chickens for eggs is the most expensive eggs you'll ever have. Yeah. Because it costs a lot to get them. It costs a lot to build the coops. It costs a lot to feed them. You're going to have expensive eggs at the end of the day, but you'll never run out of eggs. And they'll be the freshest you could possibly get. You just go in there and just grab the eggs out of every morning or whatever, so That's something I want to do one day, but that's down
You'd
the
have
road.
to
That's not anytime soon.
you'd have to get one of those old school like ceramic jars to keep your eggs in instead of the quartz. Have you ever seen those? It's like nowadays they're used as like table dressings where it's just like a piece of artwork basically on the table, but there used to be these ceramic, like kind of like a tin because it had a lid, but it would be the ceramic dish that you would keep the like fresh grown eggs in and just leave it out there.
Yeah, yeah, it's something I would do too. Is like if we had too many, I would just put a stand out in front of the house or something. Just be like $5 for a dozen or something like that, like fresh eggs or whatever, and just like have like an honor system. Because like there's plenty of places around here like that. I'll drive by and it's just an honor system. You just drop a $5 bill in or whatever, and just grab a dozen eggs or something.
$5 eggs, but free if you eat it raw in front of them. You just crack it.
Yeah, you have to eat the shell too.
Yeah.
You just eat it, just shell and all, just crunching it. All right, you're good. You can take a dozen if you eat 3 eggs raw right now.
I was actually
But
just
fresh
thinking
eggs are the way to
about.
go.
I was just thinking about the carnivore diet, and I didn't know if I could do fish or not, but I looked it up, and fish fall under the carnivore because it is an animal. It's just so that would help. But I was trying to figure it out too, like on the carnivore diet, what meat do I pick for my breakfast meat?
I'd probably just go eggs. Eggs are like a lean shaved steak or something like that.
Yeah.
Or some like sort of like canned beef or something like that. Just like corned beef hash, but there's other stuff in it than just meat. So something like that is probably the route I would go. Bacon, a lot of bacon too.
That's
lot
true.
of carnivore diets involve a lot of bacon. But one thing you should check out before doing the carnivore diet is going to Adams Farm in
Adam's
Athol.
Farm. Yeah.
Yeah, going to Adams Farm and getting that good shit. That beef down there is top notch. Same with their steak; they got the best steak around. I missed it. I wish we had a butcher shop near there. We do have a few like that roughly here, but it's just so damn expensive because they know they can charge it. No in Charlotte. I'm just like, dude, it's not worth, $30 a pound or whatever for like ribeye. I'm just not going to go buy that. Like that's just, it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Adams Farm is definitely the way to go. I think it's like $10 a pound for beef or whatever, but it's like, I literally see like farmers dropping off the cows, and like having them butchered there. Like some people will raise cows and chickens, stuff like that. And
Just to sell
the
them.
system would be like, yeah, they'll sell them, or they'll be like, okay, here's like the cow to butcher or whatever. And like you tell them, like you give them like half the meat and you take half the meat, but they have to do all the work for it.
Yeah.
So you end up with like I know someone personally who's like that. They raise cows and they'll bring them to a butcher. They get half the meat. They just tell them what they want out of the cow. The butcher gets the rest, and there's no cash exchange. They sell whatever meat the butcher gets, and then the person gets all the meat, and they just freeze it or whatever. And they'll do that. Like a lot of hunters will do that with deer. A lot of hunters do that with deer because they don't want to butcher it themselves. They'll kill it or whatever, but like then they'll bring it to a butcher. Yeah, it is a lot of work, and it's a lot of expertise, understanding how to get the meat and how to preserve it and all of that. So bringing it to a butcher just to have them take care of it. Someone I know who knows someone got a some sort of like African stag that they hunted. I don't know if they got it in Africa or they just found one here or something like that. Like they migrated over here over time or something. But it was like well over 400-pound, basically giant deer, and they brought him to a butcher and was just like, I just want half the meat or whatever percentage they agreed upon. And they just like kind of literally just like passed it around to people that they knew, because you're going to get a couple 100 pounds of meat. Like, what are you going to do with all that?
Yeah.
So,
Do I was going to say, we mentioned him earlier, but do the Jay Cutler method where you have an entire full body freezer out in the garage for an entire cow to last you.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say it only lasted him like a month or something like that, but he would do it all the time.
Yeah, he would spend like 50 grand a year on food or something like that. That was the thing with Jay. But then you look at Ronnie, who was eating out a lot, and he would probably spend about the same, but he was eating out and never had to really like cook a lot at home. He'd have like some stuff he cooked at home, a lot of protein shakes and stuff, but he'd eat out every single day after training and all of that and just get whatever he wanted. Granted, it worked for him. He's Ronnie Coleman. Of course, it worked for him. But yeah, Jay is a different story.
Yeah.
I do want that one day, just like a horizontal, like full body fridge with just a bunch of meat. I do want to get like a smoker and all of that too. So I'll get into it one day.
Yeah,
It'll happen.
we have one of our hometown friends here, Brad. He does a lot of smoking of meats, and he makes some damn good pork.
Yeah, you get some like a 20-pound brisket or something. Just slow cook it for like 24 hours.
Yeah,
something like that. But yeah,
it is a lot to get up on the hour and check on it, reseason it, do the work you have to do.
A lot of them now are Bluetooth, and all of that they have apps. And they'll do it for you basically. Like they turn up and down on their own, and you put the sensors in the meat, and it'll cook based off the temperature of the meat, and it'll kind of do it for you.
Yeah, but you're not going to get the seasoning stuff if you do it that way.
No, yeah, you got to do the special seasoning and all that if you really want to get it good. And you got the pellet stoves and all of that too. The pellet smokers, you can just press the button, it'll dispense more pellets in. You don't have to do it like wood or anything anymore. So
Yeah,
it's a different world now when it comes to smoking meat and everything. Even grills are like so much cheaper than they used to be. I mean, I got a pretty good grill. It's a 4-burner grill with a pan grill on the side, and that was like a few $100. I was like, wow, this is really not as expensive as they used to be. I remember grills growing up; they were like $600 for like a 3-burner one. I was like, damn.
yeah.
Now they're not too bad now. So
Go get one of the what are they called? The countertop ones. There's like a brand that
yeah, like a Blackstone.
Blackstone. There you go. Yeah, you get the Blackstone, and
Oh, those are sick. I want one of those too.
in my dream home, I have one because when I was working the grill and making subs and stuff on that, it's so satisfying to chop up steak on that or chop up anything because you just take two flat-edged, like, I don't know what they're even called, but you just go to town on it. It's so satisfying.
It's like hibachi kind of. You just cook everything on one grill.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just cook it all at once. You put a bunch of rice on there, some soy sauce, some bok choy and peas and carrots and stuff like that. And then on the other grill, you got all the steak and chicken cooking and all that.
Yep.
Yeah, I would love a Blackstone one day. I know people who have a Blackstone. I've cooked on it, and it's pretty fun. But yeah, I just got my. They even make ones now. If you have like the glass electric stoves, you can get like these giant cast iron like plates you can put on top. You just turn all the burners on. They're basically a Blackstone now, in a way. I have looked into those, but ours is the coil. We have the coils, so it wouldn't really work the same on ours. But if you have an electric one, it's pretty sweet.
I feel like the electric one is a lot more financially sustainable too, because to get one of those flat tops up to temperature takes a lot of fuel, because you gotta think like especially if you're looking at like even like a 3x3 or something like that, that's a lot of metal to all have heating up at the same time, and that fuel is being dispersed amongst like little tracers at each different part of the grill. So it's like that would take a lot, but the electric one would make sense, especially if you're like living off you've gotten off the grid and you're doing solar or something like wind farm, something like that, and you're getting your own electricity. You don't have to worry about that. So that would be the ideal situation.
It's also better for like apartments too, where like they don't allow you to have like grills and all that. You can just put that like cast iron on top of your electric grill, or not your electric stove.
Yeah, you could even put one of the electric ones just on the counter.
Well, yeah, I've had a George Foreman in the past, which you could do. You could put it on the pole out on the porch, which is what I did, or you can have it on the counter and cook it that way. But it smokes up the house, so I just keep it outside. Yeah. But here we have land, so I could put a grill outside and cook that way. But I usually end up being kind of lazy and just cooking my chicken in the stove just because it's so much easier. I just preheat it, just throw the chicken in, just call it a day for 25 minutes and just walk away. But on the grill, it's just so much better. It's just 10 times better on the grill. If you get a grill, it's so much better.
You got to pull a Michael Scott. Do you know that bit from The Office?
No, I don't watch The Office. I don't know.
Yeah, he does. Michael Scott, the boss, he does a lot of really dumb stuff throughout the show. But he goes, I really, really, really love the smell of bacon when I wake up. Except my problem is I don't have anyone there to make it for me. So I set my alarm a half hour early. I have a George Foreman at the foot of my bed, and I wake up at a half hour early, slap some bacon on, and then go back to bed. And I can smell the bacon when I wake up. But today, I left it open and I stepped on it. So I burned my foot on a George Foreman grill.
There was a Shark Tank product that somebody pitched, which was an alarm clock, and it would cook bacon on your nightstand, like in the alarm clock. So when the alarm clock would go off, you'd have like cooked bacon ready.
Yeah.
And all the sharks dropped out because you're like, this is clearly a fire hazard. Like you can't, like this is such a bad idea.
Sleep through
like, anything
the
can
alarm.
Happen. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you sleep through the alarm. You're just burning bacon next to you, and it was just not a good idea. He didn't have it. He just had a prototype, and he didn't have any sales or anything, so they all dropped out. But it was just like, this is clear. There's clearly flaws in this problem. Like I get what you're trying to do, but
let's say you sleep the amount you should sleep, so you're sleeping between 8 and 10 hours. Is there a fridge part of this, or are you just letting room temperature bacon sit there the whole day?
Yeah, it just sits there. The bacon just sits inside the grill of the alarm clock. It's a little tiny like one strip grill in there, and you just let it sit overnight, and it just cooks it in the morning. I'm like, that's such a. I think it was like a college graduate that came up with it in college, and I'm just like, that is such a frat boy invention to make.
Well,
like there's
on those things you could for sure set like the level of cooking you want for the bacon. Imagine someone who likes, not crispy bacon, so someone who's a incel, but someone who doesn't like crispy bacon, and they get like a flobby piece and they take it out and they're just dripping grease down on the bed with them.
Yeah, it's just nasty. I'm just ugh. I hate cooking bacon. I mean, I love the smell of bacon, but just all the grease and everything involved with it, it just
I
feel it on my skin.
Yeah.
I don't save it. I just throw it out. There's nothing I use the bacon grease for. There's plenty of things to use it for. I just don't use it. But it's
cook some chicken breast in bacon grease. You're gonna unlock some new flavors in there, my friend.
Oh, I'm sure. I just never really use it. And usually whenever I cook bacon, I cook a couple pounds at once because I get like thick cut, like super fatty pieces.
Yeah.
You lose like half the weight by the time you're done. So like I end up cooking like a couple pounds at once. And the amount of grease, I have to literally put a plate underneath my grill because the actual grease catcher, there's too much grease for the grease catcher alone.
Yeah.
So I have to put a plate to catch it, and then I have to just wipe that with a paper towel and put that in the trash. It's the amount of grease is crazy. But the other thing we wanted to touch on today as a perfect segment is how do you look at your physique in an unbiased manner? How can you be like, okay, this is actually what I need to work on. This is what I need to improve upon in order to have a more well-rounded physique. Because it's like singers listening to their voice or voice actors listen to their voice to critique on how it sounds and how they should be doing it. If you're critiquing, how you're acting or something like that. It's even difficult for us, like even for me, like to like listen to my voice after like episodes and be like, all right, is this how it's supposed to sound? Because it is hard to listen to your own voice. So like, how do you look at your physique in an unbiased manner? How do you not look at just the negatives and also look at the positives as well? So like, I wanted to touch upon that because that is a very difficult thing to do, to detach yourself from your physique and be like, all right, this is where I was at this time. This is where I want to be at this time. How do I, look at it and, okay, what do I need to work on? The first thing to acknowledge is what part of your plan that you're in, whether that's like a bulking phase, a, recomp phase, maintenance phase, prep phase, stuff like that. And then what tools are at your disposal to make these changes, right? If you're more limited, for instance, on like the equipment that you have, if you're just working out of your garage, you just have dumbbells or something like that, how can you use those to manipulate your physique and grow or cut or something like that in order to improve your physique? And how do I effectively look at photos or videos or something like that in order to improve upon them each week? Stuff like that is very difficult to obtain and understand, like how to critique yourself. So figured we just talk about some tricks that we use, myself and then also yourself, Stoph, to see what you use to kind of be like, all right, this is what I need to improve upon. This is what is my weakness, without looking at only the negative stuff, because it is very hard to. We're the hardest. We're the toughest critics. We're our own toughest critics. So, what do you do to kind of look to be more detached from yourself when you're looking at what you need to improve upon? What is your mindset, and where do you go, and what do you do personally?
I didn't have a good grasp on it until I started working with my former coach, and what really, and obviously you learn things, but one of the first sessions, he told me most of the people I coach go on to become coaches because they absorb the material and just continue to apply it. And that, I mean, I'm not coaching right now, but it's certainly something that I continue to apply. But it's taking progress pics in poses and hitting the same pose in the same lighting in the same spot, generally at the same time. So for me, it was, I had a couple different poses I do. A lot of it was like classic physique style stuff. So I do like, a front double, a side chest, a rear lat spread. I would try to do a quad stomp just for the picture, like one for each side, just to really draw out the quads. But more so, I would check out quads by angling it correctly for the front double. And then I do all those pictures in, like a Speedo or hiked up my underwear or something like that. So then you get just the full view. You do it in the same lighting, the same time. I was doing it at whenever I would wake up. So like for me, that was no pump. And that's really because if I was comparing pump pictures, it just wouldn't be, I wouldn't be able to look at it from that unbiased perspective. And so taking those pictures and then lining up the poses to one another, not lining up like, for example, if you do a front double, you can see your lats. Like when you bring your arms around and you rear them up, that's popping your lats to give yourself more width on that pose. So I'm not comparing my back lat spread to my front double. I'm comparing pose to pose, and then also not doing it week to week. Not comparing week to week. I take pictures week to week, but not comparing week to week because changes take time. So a more efficient way for me doing it was month to month, maybe every other month, something like that. And then from there, you can kind of branch off and look at it objectively. Like, okay, here I was in this picture. Improvements have been, let's say, I can see a little bit more definition from my delts to my, arms, my bicep tricep area. Like I can see like a little bit of a ridged curve there. Like that's what I want to see. That's like a positive. Then you say, okay, well, with that being the positive, quads, I need to have a little bit more, definition on the teardrop. Like you pick out certain and specific things after comparing with some considerable time in between, because I mean, you mentioned it, like we're our own worst critic, and if you get into the habit of looking at yourself, day to day, week to week, you are going to get frustrated, and that's why a lot of people stop in their fitness journeys, because they say, I don't get results, and they don't realize that you're not going to see, other than newbie gains, obviously, you're not going to see considerable improvements for months, years, maybe even multiple years. Like we're talking a long process, and that's why, to go from the objective standpoint, you have to space it out. The subjective standpoint, you can look at it every day and be like, oh, well, this looks better than this did the other day. But that's all subjective. So to take yourself out of that and take away the bias, you have to be able to look at it from over an extended period of time. So basically, my go-to has been extended period of time and multiple poses. That's basically what I got out of my coaching segment.
Yeah, that's why I say, day to day, you're not going to notice a lot. You're always looking at yourself in the mirror, especially when you're training. So you're not going to notice a ton from day to day. Weekly weigh-ins is really the way to go. Most coaches will do at least a weekly weigh-in, if not a couple times a week. But most of the time it's just once a week. I mean, the only time I've ever done more than like once a week was when I was in prep. And even then it was towards like peak
Showtime.
Week.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like pretty close to showtime when I'd start doing like every other day. Like I think it was like 4 weeks out, it was like twice a week, and then it was like 2 weeks out, or might have been like 3 weeks out. I don't know. I'm trying to remember. I think it was 6 weeks out. We started doing every other week, twice a week, and then it was like 4 weeks out. We started doing every other day, and then I think it was like 2 weeks out. We started doing like everyday weigh-ins, because that's when you actually start making progress every day and making changes every day. But very seldom does anybody ever get to experience that. Most of the time people only really start seeing changes like weekly, basically. So weekly photos in the same lighting. It's hard to do natural lighting that way because, weather's going to be different. The sun's going to be different every day. So try to do something indoors that relies on artificial lighting. Ring lights, a lot of bodybuilders use a lot of ring lights. You know, they'll darken a room or something. Take photos with a ring light because the ring light's going to be the same every time. I use my office. I have an overhead light that's pretty bright. So I do that, do an overhead light. It's not the best lighting, but that's not what matters. You don't need amazing lighting as long as you have lighting that can at least show what's kind of going on. And then just doing weekly photos, even if it's just for yourself. You can look at week to week, month to month, year to year. I mean, if I looked at myself now versus a year ago, right now, obviously like right now I was in prep last year. Yeah, July I was in prep last year. I was pretty deep in prep. So I can't really compare myself to this time last year. But if I compared myself to like this period of this phase in comparison to like this period of last year's phase that was similar, then I could really compare myself and you would see the changes. The other thing that I kind of do is like, especially if you're in a bodybuilding and you're kind of critiquing like bodybuilders on stage, and what your opinions are, like when we critique like the Olympia and what our thoughts are on different physiques, you literally just do the exact same thing for your physique. Like, what would you think if somebody was showing you this physique? Like, what would you improve? Like, that's kind of what I use is like, all right, so if I'm looking at my physique and I'm looking at my photos and stuff, like looking at it, what would I improve? Like if this is somebody else, how would I improve it? And 9 times out of 10, if you're able to detach yourself like that and just look at yourself from a third person view, where if you're like, all right, let me break down exactly what I have presented. What are my strengths and what are my weaknesses? Even if like you still don't think like, because here's the thing too, like you might think that like everything's a weakness. You know, I need to get bigger this or leaner this, like everything needs to be bigger. Everything needs to be leaner. Sure. That makes sense. You know, I want everything bigger. I want everything leaner. Totally makes sense. But if you compare it like muscle group to muscle group, like what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses in comparison to my overall physique? Like how's my back in comparison to my chest? Like is my chest a strength or a weakness, or is my back a strength or weakness in comparison to the two, or something like that? So if you got to look at your overall physique and then just kind of break it down by muscle group. So for like me, my problem right now isn't necessarily the width of my back, is the thickness. I need a bit more thickness. So like I know the width is there, but knowing that the width is there, it takes away from the thickness. So I need to get a bit more thickness in my back. You know, when I'm doing any sort of posing, I could tell my triceps are lacking in comparison to my biceps. So my biceps pull a bit from my triceps. So I'm like, all right, I need to improve upon my triceps. Always need to improve upon, especially men's physique, you always need to improve upon your delts and your upper chest. It's always something you need to improve upon. It's always something to work on. So you're always focusing on that. And if you're doing something involving your legs, all right, how does my hams compare to my glutes? Like legs are a lot more difficult to critique especially because of hams, because big hams, you won't know if you have big hams or good hams until you see them. Like it's hard to find like somebody who has really good hams. And really the best way to do that is honestly look at like pro bodybuilders and be like, all right, like Jay's or like Chris, like C-Bum's hams, he has really good hams and really good glutes. So like you could look at his hams and be like, okay, so this is what really good hams would look like. This is what I'm looking for in my hams. So you can look at like your hams versus your quads. Okay, what's pulling from the other? Which one do I need to focus on a bit more? Same thing with your quads. A lot of guys I'm the opposite, but a lot of guys are very teardrop heavy. So like when you're looking at your quads, okay, what do I need to improve upon the different heads of my quads, for instance? You know, so like for me, my triceps, the long head is what I need to improve upon the most, my triceps. So I'm doing specifically movements where my elbows are more pointed outwards, you know, like overhead tricep extensions, single arm tricep pull downs, stuff like that, or push downs, stuff like that. But when you're looking at your quads, for me, I'm very quad sweep heavy, very outer quad heavy, which is a good thing because my quads pop, but at the same time, my teardrops are lacking in comparison. So I need to work on my teardrops a bit more, stuff like that. So you got to compare them. You can kind of compare your muscle groups against each other and see what's pulling from the other. Just like you would critique somebody on stage, you know, you critique, you know, what do they have strengths? What do they have weaknesses? And like comparison is a thief of joy. Don't get me wrong, but like you can definitely compare yourself to somebody else. Like compare yourself to the pros is obviously a different world, but like if you're comparing yourself to, especially when you're competing, it's very easy to compare yourself against other people you're competing against. What do they have strengths? What do they have weaknesses? Like what's there, you know, especially when you get the photos back after a show, be like, okay, here's who won and here's where I was. What can I improve upon to achieve a physique that would have beaten first place? Like, what is it that needs to be worked on. And, you know, stuff like that will also assist as well. So detaching yourself, looking at yourself in the third person, and just doing that routinely as often as you possibly can will detach yourself, and you will be able to achieve that. Like, okay, this is really, you can't, like, you're looking at yourself and it's not you. You can really start doing that. And like I said, we are our harshest critiques, but you need to also acknowledge your strengths too, especially when within your physique itself. It might not be a strength in comparison to somebody else. You know, you might not think that you have a big back or whatever, but you compare yourself to yourself. You know, you might be like, okay, my back is one of my strengths right now, so maybe I should pull training from my back a little bit and focus it on something else, which kind of ties into what the last episode was talking about. When I was talking about like, how do you evolve your training split around what you need to improve upon. So developing what you need to improve upon and understanding that is just the first step. And, you know, like the weekly photos, like stuff like what you're saying is exactly how you do that. You just do weekly photos. You will see the changes from week to week as long as you're sticking to it. And then also not weighing yourself every day is also a big one too, which we've talked about before.
Especially
if you weigh yourself every day,
loss, like trying to lose weight. Yeah.
Yeah. The best way to look at it is it's not going to be a steady graph. It's every day to day. You're not going to look at a graph that's going to be up and down. Like, or it's not going to be just straight down the whole time. It's not going to happen. But when you look at the bigger picture from like a week standpoint or a month standpoint or a year, you're going to see a graph that's gradually going down. It's just an average. Your average is going to be going down over time. Your graph from day to day is going to go up, down, left, right. It's going to go in all kinds of directions. But when you look at the overarching bigger picture, you will see that gradual average going down. So not weighing yourself every day. You can weigh yourself every day, but don't let the number deter you from what you're trying to do. Just because you didn't lose weight from day to day doesn't mean that you're not making the progress. So you could write down the weights from day to day and then take the average over a month or something like that. And you'll see that you are going down over time, which is why those weekly weigh-ins are important, because you will see the average from week to week typically go down. If you have an off week, sometimes there's days where I'll go into a weigh-in and my weight is higher, and it might just be a little bit of water intake. Might have just held on to some water, but then the next week I'll be down like 4 pounds. You know, I might be up to the previous week, but then down then 4 the next week. In comparison, like the whole month, I'm really overall down like a few pounds overall the whole month, but it was kind of fluctuating along the way. So you will see stuff like that as well. And when you're gaining muscle, you also don't want to see it go straight up as well. You don't want to see a lot of weight go up. You want to see it go pretty gradually, which sounds counterintuitive. It sounds like you should be putting on a lot of weight, but you really shouldn't be. If you're doing like a lean bulk, which you really should be doing, especially if you're natural, you should be doing a lean bulk, just slowly going up over time, you know, half pound a week or something like that. Doesn't sound like a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, if you put on, you know, 20 pounds a year and it's pretty decent composition for the weight, you know, maybe 5 pounds of fat, 15 pounds of muscle, which is a ton in a year. Don't get me wrong. That is a fucking ton.
Yeah.
But like proportion wise, you're going to look significantly better with the higher weight than you did a year ago, even though you're only 20 pounds heavier. You know, I mean, I would say the average, like overall, if you really want like really good results, like 10 pounds a year, where like 50% to 80% of that is muscle, you will have a completely different physique from year to year. Most people can't expect that. I mean, on average, if you're natural, you probably expect like a few pounds of muscle a year. But if you put on average, you know, let's say 5 pounds of muscle, 5 pounds of weight, and 3 pounds of that is muscle a year, and you just trim the fat down every so often, you'll have a completely different physique. So also take into account that weight isn't what matters. It's what's in the mirror that matters. Mm-hmm. Weight is just one marker that tells you that as well. And also, like, if you're not immediately making progress off of a plan or something like that, just give it time. For me, the rule of thumb is like, if I make a drastic change, like changing the diet up completely or changing up my training completely, or even like taking something that's brand new for me, like it won't kick in really for like a couple of weeks. I won't really see the progress for a couple of weeks. So like, you also got to take that into account too. You might not see results right away, but you got to stick to it. You know, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So don't give up right when you don't see progress that you wanted to see. You will see the progress eventually. You just got to stick to it. So those are all tools to utilize to better look at your physique.
I've drank one protein powder shake. Why don't I have sebum's chest?
If you're not making progress at the first day, start taking anabolic steroids.
Yeah, that's an age-old joke right there.
yeah. That's one of the Arnold ones.
If at first you
like
don't
use
succeed,
the AI voice,
take anabolic steroids.
Yeah, immediately. Just get right into it immediately. Just give up. Just give up, be natural, and just immediately get into steroids. But, I mean, guys will do that too. They'll think, oh, I'm not making a lot of gains off of this amount of steroids. And it's like, dude, you gave yourself a fucking week. Your body doesn't even know what's going on yet.
Yeah.
You're already doubling your dosage, but your body hasn't adapted. Like stuff like that. I mean, we've talked about it. GH is a big one. That it takes 6 months for your body to actually really start utilizing the GH. So it's like, don't keep increasing the dosage. You haven't even started the fucking results yet.
Yeah.
And that goes for food too. I mean, there's times where we'll change up my diet completely, go to keto or whatever the case may be, and I won't see anything happen. And then literally like a light switch, just 2 weeks later, almost on the day, my body's like, holy shit, what's going on? And then I start having the shits or whatever, and I start pissing my mind out. And then all of a sudden, fat just starts falling off my body. You just gotta let it process it. Your body takes time. Your body is simple in that what you need to do to change it is pretty simple, but it's also complex in that not everybody's is the same, and you will get different results from everything that you try. So then somebody else, you know what I mean? So give your body the time it needs to adapt, look at the results in a bigger picture, compare yourself from year to year, month to month, and you will see those results. And just try to detach your mind from yourself as much as you possibly can. Critique yourself based off of yourself, but then also if you're ever on stage, critique yourself against other people and see what you can improve upon. You're not going to have the same physique as somebody else. You don't want to be the next C-bum. You don't want to be the next Arnold or whatever, because you're not going to be the next Arnold. Arnold was Arnold. You are you. So just be the next version of you. Be the better version of you when you're critiquing yourself. And just know that that's the beauty of fitness, of bodybuilding and all of that, is that you're going to present something that somebody else doesn't have. And you got to work with that. Everybody has their strengths, everybody has their weaknesses, and in hiding your weaknesses, improving upon them, and emphasizing your strengths is part of the game. So believe in the process, trust yourself, and you'll get there. Just gotta look at yourself in a third person manner and detach yourself, and you'll get there.
Hell yeah. Motivation.
But that's pretty much it for
motivation to run through a wall today.
Yeah. Let's get it. Stay frosty. No. But all right, well, appreciate you guys listening. We'll be back next week for another episode, and get training, eat some food, put on some size, and just have fun doing it.
Mog on people.
Do it. Mog. You're better. All right, we'll see you guys.
All right, peace.